This is the Berman Method podcast featuring Dr. Jake Berman and physician assistant Jenni Berman. We are here to treat problems and not symptoms. Disclaimer, this podcast is for entertainment purposes only and not to treat anyone or to give medical advice. If you are interested in any information that we are giving and would like to use this for yourself, we recommend that you contact your primary care physician or reach out to us and ask us questions about yourself specifically. Enjoy!
And we're back for the Berman Method podcast, where we are treating problems and not symptoms. We are David against Goliath. We are going against the corporate medical system because it ain't doing the right job, right? My name's Dr. Jake Berman. I'm here with my lovely wife. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Jenni Berman, physician assistant.
All right. It's been a while since we've done one together here, so this is exciting to be back on the same podcast. We get to wheel and deal, get to grill you today on
Insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance. Yay! So before some of you guys don't get excited about this and think that this is not for you, believe it or not, this is for a lot more people than you might think. A lot of you are headed in that direction, even if you don't know it yet. So just pay attention to this, even if you don't think it applies to you, because there's a good chance that it will.
Or if it doesn't apply to you directly, someone you know, your mom, your dad, your aunt, your sister.
Somebody.
Most people this applies to.
Good. So again, we're going against the corporate medical system because if you have insulin resistance or you are at risk for insulin resistance and you go to your normal general practitioner, your normal primary care doctor, you're going to get put on some medications that are going to treat the symptoms of insulin resistance versus why not figure out what caused the insulin resistance to begin with? In my case, hopefully I'm not insulin resistance, but I'm working towards it, right? In my case, it's my addiction to cookies. Oh my gosh, I can't just eat one. It's kind of like Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. You put a plate of cookies in front of me, especially soft, baked, warm chocolate chip cookies, they're gone. The whole plate's gone.
12, 16.
It doesn't matter. They're going to be gone.
People can't believe it when they look at you, but it really is true. It's a problem.
It is a problem, and I'm working on it.
So I'm going to interrupt your cookie addiction story and just say insulin resistance is a big word for things like prediabetes, diabetes, high blood sugar. So maybe you've gone to the doctor in the past 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is, and they say, oh, your blood sugar's a little high today. You better watch that. That's them saying, hey, you're a little insulin resistant. You better watch that because this is going to develop into something like diabetes, which then we know can create a whole slew of effects. Okay.
So are we getting straight into the first question then? What is insulin resistance?
Sure, I can talk about that. But I do want to say before, anybody hops off and says, I don't have a problem with my food, I'm not going to become pre-diabetic. Insulin resistance can actually be an effect of many other things besides your food. So again, this is for many, many people. Stay tuned. All right. So what is insulin resistance, right? That's what you just asked me. Insulin resistance is a metabolic dysfunction in which we are not metabolizing our food efficiently. So if we are not metabolizing the food efficiently, our body is actually storing food as sugar, which causes an elevation of our blood sugar. Now, when the blood sugar rises, the body, the pancreas, which is an organ in our system, actually releases insulin to try to control the blood sugar. Well, over time, as the pancreas continues to release more and more insulin to stabilize our blood sugar, the pancreas gets tired and just isn't able to keep up with the chronic elevation of the blood sugar, which then, we quit releasing enough insulin to support our blood sugar. And so then the blood sugar continues to go up and up and up. Does that make sense so far?
I think so. I think it's I don't know if we can make it any simpler. Maybe we can go back to the very beginning and say, where did the sugar come up from in the first place? I didn't eat a plate of cookies like Jake. I had what I think is a well-balanced meal, a steak, a baked potato, and some green beans. Where's the sugar at in that meal?
Well, and we are going to get into that a little bit deeper on what actually causes blood sugar elevation. One of them definitely is food. So simple carbohydrates like baked potato. Believe it or not, baked potato is straight, simple carbohydrates, which means our body is not able to metabolize that efficiently. Things like flours, breads, pastas, rice, potatoes, even sweet potato is a carbohydrate. Fruit is a carbohydrate. So, and then of course, things like pastries and donuts, muffins, cookies,
bagels.
Yep. Bagels, bread, any bread product. And even, believe it or not, milk, whether it's whole milk or fat-free milk, a cup of fat-free milk has 13 grams of sugar in it.
Come on. I thought it's healthy. I thought it was making my bones strong, and there was even some protein in there.
Right. I know, but it still has that sugar, which the body is not metabolizing efficiently. So what happens when the blood sugar is then chronically elevated and the body is not able to metabolize this sugar and break down the sugar? We actually store the sugar, which turns to fat, most commonly abdominal fat. So that's where the belly comes in.
So are we getting into the next one now? What effects does insulin resistance have?
What effects does it have? Do you know?
Oh man, you put me on the spot like that. So,
well, I just said one.
Yeah, abdominal fat. We're going to gain abdominal fat. Insulin resistance, essentially, in my words, is saying my body is not capable of breaking down sugars into something that I can utilize them for effectively. So it's going to store the sugar. Sugar is stored as adipose tissue or fat, most commonly in the abdomen for a quote unquote a rainy day. That's why your body stores fat, is for a rainy day, because it's preparing for famine someday, right?
Right. So that's one of the biggest symptoms or effects of insulin resistance is the abdominal fat. Now, insulin resistance has a lot of effects on the body. You might notice that you have an increase of hunger, specifically carbohydrates or sugar. If you're craving sugar, whether it's at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, nighttime sugar cravings is a huge one. This can be an effect of an unstable blood sugar or the blood sugar rising, falling throughout the day, which is a result of insulin resistance. So, waking up at night to eat, or if you eat dinner and an hour later, you're just craving those cookies or that candy, that's a number one sign for you.
I guess I have a little bit of a question there. I don't know if we're going to talk about this more later, so forgive me if I'm jumping ahead to something, but how much of those cravings can we attribute to a habit / addiction versus actual insulin resistance where your body is actually craving it? Can you draw a line there? Is it one and the same? Is it gray, or how does that work?
It is a little gray, although I like to think of it as cause and effect, because throughout your 20s, 30s, 40s, you've been eating more carbohydrates, more sugar. You get in this, I eat dinner, I need something sweet right after because of the blood sugar instability, or I eat something and an hour later I'm hungry because you didn't have the adequate protein, you had more carbohydrates, now your blood sugar is rising and falling, so then you crave the sugar and you eat it. So you do that on a continuous cycle for years and years and years, to where then you're just in a habit of, I eat something, I need something sweet after.
There.
Yeah. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think one, when we grow up, it's like, if you finish your dinner, you get dessert. So back then, it's something that your parents are bribing you to, eat your dinner and then you can have dessert. So now we're already creating that habit, but then it turns into later the blood sugar instability. And so you continue the habit. And then, yes, it's both.
I gotta do a quick detour that this really doesn't have much to do with this podcast, but what you just said, bribing your kids. If you eat your dinner, you can get dessert. So when Jenny was growing up, she was very clever.
No,
And-
Nikki.
Oh, it was Nikki.
Yeah.
Jenny's sister, Nikki, when she was growing up, she was very clever. And she was, quote unquote, done with her dinner. And I believe it was your mom said, no, you got to keep eating dinner or you can't have dessert. And she said, I'm full. And then your mom goes, well, if you're full, you don't have room for dessert. And Nikki goes, well, my dinner side is full, but my dessert side is empty.
Yeah. So she got her. And then my mom and dad at that point were like, well, you can't argue with that. So we got to give her dessert. If her dinner side's full, but the dessert side's empty. So Anyway, all right, back to it. So effects of insulin resistance, definitely the hunger and cravings for sugar, the evening hunger after dinner, waking up at night. So if you go to sleep and then wake up and find that you're having to eat something in the middle of the night, this is a sign of insulin resistance too, which brings us to interrupted sleep. So if you find that you're able to fall asleep and not stay asleep, specifically 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, that's the big time zone, really 2 to 4 a.m. What often happens is you go to bed and your blood sugar is a little bit high and then your blood sugar starts to drop. So somewhere between 2 and 4 a.m., your body is waking you up because you're getting into a low blood sugar, and sleeping with a low blood sugar is very dangerous. So that's a sign of insulin resistance as well. Headaches, getting the jitters between meals so you can tell that your blood sugar is actually dropping. Fatigue, especially afternoon fatigue. So again, that 2 to 4 p.m. time where you're finding a dip in your energy, but if you eat something sweet, your energy seems to get a little bit better. Elevated cortisol levels. So we talked a lot about this last week, how cortisol and insulin resistance is actually a vicious cycle. One causes one, the other causes the other. So they go back and forth. And remember that chronic elevation of cortisol levels can come from chronic stress. Vitamin deficiencies. So vitamin D deficiency can actually increase your risk, can actually be an effect of insulin resistance. High triglyceride levels. So if you have chronic insulin resistance, your triglycerides, which is part of the lipid panel, can actually increase, and a low HDL, or the good cholesterol. So there's many effects that insulin resistance has. This is just a few of the very common ones. If you notice that you have any of these, then you should really be concerned about, if you don't have insulin resistance now, that you may be on the path to it.
That's a lot of stuff right there.
I know, and that wasn't even all. I'm out of breath.
Well, I'm not looking forward to this next question, but I'm going to ask it anyways because it's on the sheet here, and I told you that I'd ask all the questions. Who is at risk for insulin resistance?
You. Just kidding. So insulin resistance is actually something that you can actually start creating a higher risk of insulin resistance in your 20s and 30s. So with the foods that you're consuming in your 20s and 30s can actually set you up for insulin resistance in your 50s, 60s, 70s. Crazy. But consuming a higher carbohydrate or higher sugar diet without adequate protein can actually create that environment for the cells. Obesity, having, already being overweight, which then is most likely the result of the blood sugar issue, can lead to insulin resistance. We talked about high cortisol levels. Sleep apnea. Do you know anyone with sleep apnea?
Mm-mm.
Yes, you do.
Ooh.
Well, I'm not going to say it on the air, but yes, you do. So sleep apnea, which you might have heard of if, snoring is the most common symptom of sleep apnea, but sleep apnea can actually put you at higher risk for insulin resistance because we're not getting the proper oxygenation to the cells. We talked about how vitamin D deficiency can be an effect of insulin resistance, but actually can also be a cause of insulin resistance. So that one goes in a circle too. Family history of diabetes. If you have a family history, that can put you at higher risk for developing insulin resistance. Gestational diabetes. So if you had gestational diabetes when you were pregnant, this can also put you at risk for insulin resistance later on. Smoking.
Ooh.
Yeah, smoking causes everything though, right? But that can also increase the risk of insulin resistance as well.
Okay, I want to go back to the sleep apnea one again because we kind of just glazed over it in a sense that this is a perfect example of what we're going against with this podcast, with the Berman method. We're going completely against the Western medicine, corporate medicine style of treating because what's the quote unquote normal treatment for sleep apnea?
A CPAP machine or a machine to provide oxygen to you to help with sleep.
Yeah. So people that have sleep apnea, the normal treatment, quote unquote, normal treatment is you go and you get tested, you do a sleep study and you have sleep apnea. So let me hook you up to this machine that's going to give you oxygen for you because you can't do it yourself. So I'm going to give you a machine to do it for you. And that's okay. I guess Western medicine says that is okay. We're okay with that treatment versus why is it happening in the first place? Why don't we figure out why it's happening in the first place? Why? And then fix that instead of saying, well, we're just going to give up and let's just hook ourselves up to this machine and ruin our partner's sleep because now their partner has to sit there and try to listen to this thing and get some good sleep too. Then you got to take this sleep apnea machine traveling with you whenever you travel. Why don't we just figure out why it's happening in the first place? Soapbox. Okay, let's get back to where we're at.
And it's true. I mean, there's different causes of sleep apnea. We're specifically discussing obstructive sleep apnea, which is usually a result of being overweight. Improper sleeping technique can actually form how you're sleeping. I know that sounds weird. But how you're lying, what kind of pillow you're using, what your bed is like, your mattress can actually be a cause for obstructive sleep apnea too. And then there's other things that we can't really, I mean, we still can, but mechanical things like the jaw falling backwards during our sleep can cause obstructive sleep apnea too. But I agree with you. We should really focus on the weight loss, the food that we're taking in to help with fixing sleep apnea, which then will decrease our risk for insulin resistance.
Yeah, so everything that you just said is all fixable if you address those things first. You didn't say a single thing there that is requiring a victim mentality. I mean, there's nothing I can do about fixing XYZ, so I have to use this sleep apnea machine.
Right.
Okay, let's get back to it. How can I reverse insulin resistance? That's what I'm talking about there. How can I eat as many cookies as I want right now in my 30s and then reverse it in my 40s?
Well, I don't know if that's the mentality for reversal. I mean, we really should be preparing our body the best way possible. But so yeah, if you already have insulin resistance or someone you know does, or pre-diabetes, diabetes, you might go to the doctor with the chronic elevation of your blood sugar, your hemoglobin A1C, which is a blood test, is elevated, your triglycerides are through the roof. You're going to go to the doctor and your doctor's going to say, okay, we need to put you on a medication for your cholesterol. We need to put you on a medication for your blood sugar. If we don't get this under control, then we're going to have to use insulin. And it's just like this cascade effect, because then we've already talked about how statin medications can cause side effects, blood pressure medications can cause side effects, blood sugar medications, etc. But there is a way to naturally reverse insulin resistance, to get the body to start metabolizing more efficiently, to get the blood sugar down. The main focus should be adequate protein. And we've said that numerous times on this podcast if you've listened to prior episodes, but getting a efficient amount of protein in your diet, and it doesn't have to just come from meat. I have lots of people that say, I don't want to eat that much meat, and you don't have to, but getting enough protein to stabilize blood sugar is key. Modifying the amount or types of carbohydrates you're getting in your diet. So going more for the complex carbohydrates will help. And then also keeping your fats in good control. Exercise.
What? No, that's too much work.
Cardiovascular exercise.
Oh, my nemesis.
Your favorite. So cardiovascular exercise or aerobic exercise actually increases blood flow to the body, which then can increase insulin sensitivity or how the body is responding, the cell's response to insulin. This then will allow the blood sugar to decrease, which then over time will help to stabilize at a good blood sugar level. Now, the other thing is when you're doing cardiovascular exercise or aerobic exercise, the muscles actually use glucose or sugar, which then helps to reduce the blood sugar as well. We talked about sleep, so getting adequate sleep, getting enough sleep, sleeping through the night, getting into that deep REM cycle, which, plays into this insulin resistance. And then I will actually sometimes use supplements to help individuals start the process of reversing insulin resistance. It's not something that you take forever. One supplement specifically contains a plant sterol called Berberine, which actually helps with the glucose metabolism. So that may be helpful.
That's what I'm talking about. Just give me a pill.
Yeah, we don't start with that, but it is very efficient in helping along with the meal plan and the exercise. It's not something that you can take and it works magic. Nothing is, but it can actually help along with the meal plan and the exercise to reduce the blood sugar, and then we can get you off of it so you don't have to take it forever.
Point being that it's not a synthetic chemical that's synthesized, right? This is a natural
plant sterol, natural. Yes.
Yeah. So that's important. We're not pushing synthetic, chemically filled pills. It's just this one thing that's a natural thing that is proven to help this process out. Right. Jumpstart it, for example.
Right. And is typically safe, although there are some contraindications. So again, this podcast is not to treat you and to tell you to go get some of this supplement because it's very specific to the person and to potentially other medications or supplements that you're taking. So always contact your provider first.
Okay. Very cool. Now for the last question, right?
Yeah.
How can I prevent insulin resistance? Hopefully y'all listening at home right now or wherever you're at, you got a pretty good idea of how you can prevent it. But however, let's just go straight up, black and white. This is what I can do to prevent insulin resistance.
Yeah, so similar to reversing it, if you don't have insulin resistance yet and hope to not get it, making sure you're balancing your blood sugar with your diet. So getting enough adequate protein, balancing with the complex carbohydrates and with the fats, getting that adequate sleep, which we've already talked about numerous times, and exercising consistently. So what is consistent exercise?
Ooh, I think it depends.
It does. It does. It depends on many factors, what your current weight is, what your job is like, how sedentary you are, what your meal plan is like. But generally speaking, we will recommend 30 minutes or 20 to 30 minutes, but 30 minutes ideally of cardiovascular exercise 5 days a week.
Oh my God.
So that comes out to about 150 minutes of cardiovascular exercise on a weekly basis to help with keeping blood sugar levels stable. And then that adequate protein, which again is very patient specific.
Well, can I just eat more protein and do less cardiovascular?
Not exactly, but good try.
I'm constantly trying to negotiate with Jenny on how I can get around doing 150 minutes of cardio a week, but it's worth it. Just put in the time, get it done, and it's worth it.
And it doesn't have to be, 30 minutes on the elliptical or 30 minutes on the treadmill. Split it up into 3 10-minute walks or 3 10-minute different aspects of cardio. So 10 minutes on the elliptical, 10-minute bike ride, 10-minute walk with the dog in the evening time. Split it up during the day. It doesn't have to be consistent.
Very nice. And that's what I try to do myself because 20 minutes at one time it just drives me freaking insane.
You're getting better.
I am getting better. Okay, cool. Well, do you have anything else before we wrap all this up?
If you have questions specifically about insulin resistance or what the right amount of protein for your body is, or how you can check to see if you have insulin resistance because you think you might have some of the symptoms, then definitely reach out. You can look on our website, look on social media, send us a private message, an email, and we'll be happy to help.
Okay, so we talked about a lot. So please, please, please go back to the show notes, look at the show notes and look at them and see, is there anything on here that might sound familiar to me? Does this resemble anybody that I know, one of my family members? Really take this. This is a very valuable podcast, sometimes hard to stomach and listen to, but it's very valuable. And if you take some of these nuggets, you can really prevent some of the most detrimental diseases that occur later in life. Yes?
Yeah.
Is that
agreed? Yes.
Cool. So check us out on the socials, check us out on YouTube, check us out on the website, bermanpt.com, bermanpt.com/wellness. Give us a call, text us, email us, all those other things. And stay tuned for next week, because next week I get to rant about feet.
Ooh, like how pretty they are?
No. Oh, man, it's going to be so much fun. I'm going to get all jacked up. So, again, thank you very much for hanging out with us. This is the Berman Method podcast, where we're treating problems, not symptoms. We're going against the corporate medical system. And if you got any questions, you want to shoot any holes in our theories, feel free to reach out.
Thank you for subscribing on your social media and podcast platforms to the Berman Method. Dr. Jake Berman with Berman Physical Therapy and Jenni Berman, Physician Assistant with Berman Health and Wellness. You can find more information on our website, www.bermanpt.com for physical therapy, bermanpt.com/wellness for the health and wellness. You can also find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and on your podcast platform. So be sure to follow us, like us, subscribe to us. And if you would like any further information, definitely visit our website and reach out to us. You may also find our free reports on the websites as well, where you can download this free information